Hello guys, Stock Saturday, and it's a rather green week for me this week, outperforming the markets by quite a bit, down sort of partly to one stock, which I will get to in a second, but yeah, up about 32,000 for the week, very nice. And yeah, that's about 9% compared to S&P up 0.08%, so pretty much flat. And the Nasdaq is up 0.67%. So yeah, markets are largely flat. So what has been doing well? Crypto's been doing quite well. Gold and silver sort of holding up reasonably well. But Coeur mining in the ISA has been very strong. So we'll come to their earnings. Some of the other sort of stocks in here doing reasonably okay. Portfolio sort of slightly up. We've had some red still. Evolution not loving life at all. Below $70 now. So yeah, about 7% odd in the red. Bit of FX impact in there as well on top of that. I did buy another 10 shares. That was all of my buys in here for this week. Still sort of just letting these see where we go. But let's have a look at some news. So, beginning of the month is crypto miner updates for the foreseeable future until I sort of sell these out. But yeah, CleanSpark still looking very strong, has to be said. 633 Bitcoin produced in April. He's down quite a bit. People are still sort of putting a little bit of focus on the number of days in the month, sort of noting that like if they're producing sort of 20 Bitcoin a day, there's one day less in April than there is in March. So that's had a little bit of a downturn, and difficulty is up quite a bit, although it seems to have moderated a little at least. So have to see how May looks. But yeah, 633 holding 12,101. Which is pretty good. They didn't sell everything. They sort of noted that they have been selling some Bitcoin, which I don't think is the worst thing. Sort of share price not doing particularly well. Bitcoin is doing quite well, so I'm not against selling some Bitcoin here. Sold 401 of the 633. They've got a nice enough treasury of Bitcoin, I would say, at the moment. So yeah, sell a little bit. That's not too bad. 42.4 exahash, I think that's exactly the same, so nothing changed there, and just under 17 on efficiency, so pretty good. And they are still saying 50 exahash by the middle of the year, so hopefully another sort of 2 months gets up to 50. It's not exactly a huge leap, I suppose, where they've got multiple sites on the go. And yeah, they're sort of noting that they're not really looking to sort of dilute all that much at the moment. Securing a 200 million revolving credit facility with Coinbase, I would sort of rather they didn't go too much into debt, to be honest, because that's risky. But yeah, we do hopefully are now coming into the solid sort of Bitcoin time. Bitcoin's now up to sort of 103,000. The miners sort of, I think, need a fair bit more than that rather quickly to actually do well, because difficulty sort of still goes up. A lot of people are noting that CleanSpark were sort of just touched $20 or so back in sort of November time, I think, when Bitcoin was sort of lower price than it is now, and sort of why aren't they going up? But they're all still expanding, not really making much more money than they were back then. So yeah, we'll have to see if we get that huge Bitcoin move that we're all sort of looking for in a month or so. Well, over the space of a month or two. So Riot, on sort of second look at this, it wasn't quite as bad as I thought initially. Sort of was a little bit disappointed. Bitcoin produced 463, sort of quite a lot lower than than CleanSpark. They do obviously have much less deployed hash rate, 33.7 in deployed hash rate. That's unchanged. Operating hash rate is down 1 exahash since last month. They don't sort of really explain why. Maybe they had to sort of downturn some. It's April. It's sort of not. You'd think this is perfect mining weather. It's not sort of too hot, not too cold. You'd think electricity use is quite a bit down, but yeah, maybe they had to sort of turn some off. They sold a little bit of, well, it looks like they sold all of their Bitcoin plus a couple of extras because mined 463 and the Bitcoin held is down. What is that, 12 Bitcoin? Yeah, sold 475. So yeah, they sold all of their Bitcoin. Nothing wrong with that. With sort of 19,000 Bitcoin on the treasury. Again, people are sort of noting that they did convertible debt to buy Bitcoin, sort of at 100 and whatever it was, 105,000, 102,000, and they're now selling Bitcoin at sort of what has been 90, 95, and in the 90s, low 90s, sort of during this month. So that's not great, but they have to sort of take each quarter as it comes. The credit side is sort of slightly up on last month, similar to last year really. 2 million has been sort of much higher than that in the past, and that's brought power costs down 0.1 of a cent, and fleet efficiency stays exactly the same. But really not all that impressed with Riot and sort of holding on for their potential large AI deal. I think if they sort of confirmed one and we got a decent move in the price, then that would sort of push me to maybe make a switch, possibly to someone like Marathon. But we'll have to see. And then Hive, my small sort of is looking very small miner now. They are starting to advance their new sites, and they somehow are able to make a 0.7 exahash growth sound sort of impressive. 10% increase on peak hash rate realized last month. They're now at 7.3, so 6.6 to 7.3. Obviously, they're a much lower market cap, so we shouldn't be comparing them to sort of Riot and CleanSparks and people like those gains. But yeah, it is very slow going. They are still looking to get to 11.5 by the end of June, so that would be a little bit better. Hopefully bring fleet efficiency down a little bit because they are at a very high cost of production. I don't think they've sort of revealed the exact power cost in Paraguay, but sort of European sites and other sites are sort of very high. They're one of the highest cost miners out there. So potential, if we got a big move in Bitcoin, Hive potentially would have the biggest leverage in price gain to that, but we have yet to get that just yet. The phase 2 expansion should add 6.5 exahash, bringing total hash rate to 18 by the end of the summer, and I think they're saying sort of towards the end of the year they're looking to get to 25. Yeah, so 18 between June and August, and then by November to surpass 25. Still sort of not all that happy about building out a huge expansion by November, because I'm thinking that won't be that much longer of the bull market by then. But yeah, we'll have to see. Maybe everyone else will still be excited and prices will be up and it can sell out. And yeah, at the market offering for the 3 months in Q1, company issued 25 million shares. That is an awful lot when price is very low, so that's not ideal. I kind of would rather they just sold a little bit more Bitcoin if they needed that, to be honest, because share price is very depressed. So that'll be a headwind for sort of stronger price over, if price goes up. we can sort of never really achieve as high a price as I was hoping if powering on 25 million shares. But there you go. Have to bear with them. So something that I'm not having to bear with at the moment, certainly, at least in the last week, is Coeur mining. The first quarter results came out Wednesday night, I believe, or sort of Thursday morning, and people are incredibly happy with it. It seems. I didn't quite see what was so good about them, but the stock is up 42%, 43% for the week. So yeah, rather surprising. Obviously, gold and silver have both been relatively strong over Q1 and have sort of improved since then as well. I think sort of average gold price was about 2,800, 2,850 in Q1, and has been sort of 3,200 for sort of most of this quarter. So next quarter's results should be even better. But yes, they're looking pretty good. I do like this sort of table they give in their press release, because it gives every quarter rather than just this quarter, same quarter last year. So that's quite good. Revenue up to 360 million from sort of 305 million just last quarter, and then sort of year on year, obviously 213. They have made a large acquisition in that time, so you'd expect revenue to be up. But yeah, people sort of fairly happy with that gain. It sort of makes the headlines, revenue up sort of whatever it is, 60%. G&A expenses are down, which, to be fair, that is quite impressive, including the acquisition. And then net income, I was kind of hoping that would have been a little bit higher, 33 million. Again, as a comparable last year, they're saying up from a net loss of 29 million. That was sort of when they were building out and having sort of non-cash expenses and all that, write-downs and things. So yeah, I mean, compared to Q3 last year, 48 million, and then 37.9 in last quarter. So it's down 2 quarters in a row. But people are happy. There's some adjustments in there, which we'll have a quick look at. But yeah, so adjusted net income, 59 million is up quite a bit, but not up tremendously from Q3 and 4. Obviously way up from last year. Shares outstanding after the acquisition, 521 million, but obviously they've acquired quite a considerable amount of production for that. EBITDA 105 million, and there are some large adjustments to that. So adjusted EBITDA, I think, is the one to look at for just this quarter at least. 149 million. That is up a lot. So that's pretty good. And yeah, total debt is coming down. They're certainly deleveraging. 629 sort of at the peak, down to 605, 590, and then nearly 100 million gone off that debt in the last quarter. So that was very good. And then production doesn't look great, but production is sort of generally low in first quarter. So 86,000 ounces, a little bit lower than Q3 and 4 last year. 3.7 million of silver, though. That is largely due to sort of expansions ramping up. And then costs are sort of a bit of a mixed bag. 1330 costs applicable to sales. Still never like that metric. I have sort of done a little bit of maths and a little bit of reading around, and I think that sort of gives about 1650 on all-in sustaining cost for gold. So that's a little bit higher than Equinox, my sort of other main gold miner, actually. And I'm doing a lot of comparing to Equinox sort of in the last week, and we'll be doing a little bit more over the weekend, sort of kind of considering a switch potentially. Silver, obviously with the new acquisition, that is a very low cost mine at 14.28 cost applicable to sales. Again, all-in sustaining cost, it does add quite a bit to that. I think you're more looking at sort of $20 all-in sustaining cost on silver. So with $32 silver at the moment, it's a nice margin, but not quite as good as the gold margin. So just coming over to their presentation, they give some nice sort of indications of, I guess, what people are liking. First quarter revenue mix, they're sort of showing more diversification, sort of 27%, 23, 18, 16, 16, and sort of 5 separate mines. That's quite a nice diversification, sort of separated between the US and sort of Central America. Which is pretty good, and 65% gold, 35% silver, approximately. So a lot of people sort of want a more silver-focused miner. You have people like Pan American, and then a lot of other companies are generally sort of more heavy gold with only a small amount of silver. But the acquisition increases their silver sort of percentage of total revenue quite substantially. So that's pretty good. So this stuck out quite a lot to me, just sort of comparing Coeur Mining to Equinox. The adjusted EBITDA obviously has been rising quite a bit with gold prices up, and the acquisition, first quarter 149 million, and for this year they're projecting around 700 million of adjusted EBITDA. But from looking at Equinox's sort of updated projection, including their Calibre Mining acquisition, they're looking at, I think, sort of 1.5 billion, sort of 1 to 1.5 billion of adjusted EBITDA this year. But next year, I think, is sort of the more important, because they've got another mine ramping up on the Calibre Mining side, and they're looking at potentially 2 billion in adjusted EBITDA. And they were basing that on sort of $2,900 gold. So if next year, even if it held where it is now, it would be a bit higher than that. And with this large move up in Coeur Mining this week, they're almost the same market cap. I believe about 5 billion for Coeur Mining compared to 5.2 billion once the acquisition goes through of between Equinox and Calibre. So pretty much the same margin for potentially sort of, almost triple the adjusted EBITDA. There's other costs that go into after that, but yeah, that is quite a stark difference. Free cash flow sort of 350 million projected for this year for Coeur. If Equinox are looking at sort of 2 billion plus of adjusted EBITDA, I would imagine free cash flow can be significantly higher than that. But then this is the main slide that I sort of keep coming back to, sort of comparing Coeur to Equinox. We'll sort of go into Equinox's earnings more next week, but if we're talking pretty much the same market cap, they could be sort of the same, if not Coeur Mining could be a little bit more by sort of Monday, Tuesday potentially, if we get another reasonably small move. And sort of comparing their production, we're looking at sort of say 400,000 ounces of gold for Coeur Mining, and say 19 million ounces of silver. So compared to, if you're saying what you get for Equinox, you lose that sort of 19 million ounces of silver, and you gain this year about sort of 550,000 ounces of gold, and sort of potentially next year, once everything's ramped up, I don't think Coeur Mining's going to be going up all that much. You could be getting sort of 800,000 more ounces of gold. So just doing some rough numbers on these, I would see 800,000 ounces of gold as far more valuable, potentially triple the value of sort of even 20 million ounces of silver, unless silver absolutely rockets up, which people have been sort of saying for years and never really happens. You sort of noted the all-in sustaining costs. Coeur Mining's silver all-in sustaining cost is about 2/3 of the silver price, and gold is about half of the current price. So yeah, there's a lot more money basically in gold than there is silver. So with Equinox being entirely gold, you would expect that to be a little bit more valuable. So yeah, that's sort of the crux of my thinking there. I think Equinox are going through a little bit of short-term pain with some of the mines, but if we sort of look at next year and assume that largely everything falls into line, then I think there's money to be made switching maybe some Coeur Mining to Equinox. I'm not, it's a over £40,000 position. I'm not just going to sort of sell the entire lot tomorrow, or Monday at least, and make the switch. But yeah, I can't really see anything jumping out at me that puts Coeur Mining above Equinox. If you look at all-in sustaining cost, again, sort of total for the whole company consolidated, I make to be about $1,600, $1,650. Equinox are projecting, again, not this quarter, it's always sort of a couple of 2 or 3 quarters in the future, but they say they're looking at $1,500. So, it's $150 less than Coeur Mining. And obviously the silver, as I say, unless silver rockets up, silver is lower margin at the moment, even with their new acquisition. It still only brings them to sort of $20 or so, maybe sort of $15 to $20 going forward. But yeah, a huge move on Coeur Mining this week is certainly making me think. So just looking at some economic news for the week, it was quite a big week. We got the ISM non-manufacturing PMI, sort of bellwether for the US economy, 51.6, quite a bit higher than previous, and the forecast. It was expected to drop a bit, with sort of April being tariff month and everyone unhappy. Everyone's not really quite that unhappy from the looks of it. Tuesday, not really that much happened. Wednesday, we got the FOMC, decision. We all knew that they weren't going to cut rates or change rates at all. But the press conference, Powell was sort of a little bit mixed, really, sort of saying some things are looking worse. There's potential for unemployment, but he's also saying there's potential for inflation, and sort of basically overall they need to watch as data comes in and make a decision then. So people are sort of kind of hoping for him to start hinting at a June cut, which doesn't look very likely at the moment. So people are on to I think it's August now, for potentially the next cut, and sort of odds of a June cut have tanked quite a bit. In contrast, the UK did cut rates, 0.25%. They were expected to. It was expected to be a 9-0 vote. Did actually end up being a 7-2 vote. 2 of them voted for unchanged, although 2 of these 7 voted for 0.5% cut. So, yeah, I suppose you could see that as relatively even. Jobless claims were sort of, looking pretty good, really. Last week's in the US was revised down slightly, and this week's is back down to 1.88 million, and initial claims lower than last week and expectations. So maybe just a bit of a blip. Some people were sort of seeing this as potentially the ramp up. You get bears who we're looking at this and suddenly saying, there you go, that's the start of it, unemployment to 6%, and the world's going to end. And so far, that doesn't seem to be the case. And, this is admittedly all over the place every week, but the sort of projected GDP for Q2 in the US, 2.3%. So no recession. It was basically an anomaly in Q1 with imports and, stockpiling and all sorts. They're saying Q2 looks a lot better. So, portfolio-wise, as we say, Coeur mining has very, very quickly come right back to the top at 43,000. Is looking rather nice. Clean Spark and Equinox is sort of obviously up a little with sort of gold and silver prices doing quite well. They did get quite a knock on the earnings, so that's down, I think, about 6-7% on the week. But over the past month or two, it's certainly been looking up, and I certainly see value there. But I want to dig into the earnings a little bit more. The crypto miners sort of inching up, but very, very slowly, as I say. Fresnillo, though, just seems to be loving life at the moment. £10.61 now, compared to my £7.22. I thought I was buying it at a sort of, I was buying it part way up. Admittedly, I was swapping for another miner, so I tend to ignore sort of how much the price has gone up because what you're selling has gone up as well. But yeah, it's rocketed up since then. 47% up since I bought not so long ago. So looking forward to seeing their earnings. Herein has sort of come up a little. Hive has come up a little. I did buy another 500 shares of Hive and 200 of Herein. Sort of putting my cash in. Used sort of nearly half of this year's ISA deposit now. So I don't know. I suppose could say I hope the crypto miners don't rocket up, and I might be able to sort of get a little bit more in there before they do go up. Assuming they do. Sort of reluctant to pile too much into them. Sort of wondering whether I want to put a bit more into gold or start diversifying into tech stocks and other stuff. I was looking at Meta platforms when we had the sort of fairly big drop. They sort of dropped to about 450, and I think they're back above 600 now. So yeah, you could say I'm missing out opportunity cost on some of these other sort of other sectors. Interactive Brokers side is still sort of bobbing up and down. Pan American not looking too bad. KGHM sort of pushing up a little again. Copper sort of doesn't really seem to know where to go at the moment, and silver is just planted around sort of 32. So yeah, not a huge amount happening there. And on the invest side, yes, Coeur mining obviously with that enormous move has rocketed back up. I think this was £8,000 position last week for the total. And is now 20,000. So you can see the sort of move you get with options. Sort of 42% increase in price is 150% gain on the options for the week, and yeah, he's now sitting at 580% in total. So considering sort of unsure whether to take profit on the stock in the ISA or on the options, to be honest, or maybe a mixture of both. But yeah, every dollar sort of Coeur mining goes up makes an enormous difference to the options, whereas obviously the stock not so much. So we'll see. Equinox is sort of fairly unchanged since last week, pretty much break even. So yeah, selling and putting into Equinox does look extremely tempting. Hive sort of has barely moved really. I did buy a little bit more. That's all I bought in here this week. Himax has come down ever so slightly, but I still think they have potential for the second half of the year. Herein sort of not really moved all that much, a little bit up. Wasn't able to buy any this week. Riot sort of has been looking up slightly, but this is sort of high risk. They're at whatever they are, $8. And yeah, some of these options are for $35 riot. So yeah, that's looks a tall order, but I guess if we get a big Bitcoin move, could potentially come. And then CleanSpark, my smaller bet in here, has gone back into profit. So still 8 grand, just under 8 grand left in cash. Unsure whether I'll sort of deploy all of that or be timed out. We'll see. It's how much risk I want to take. But leave your thoughts in comments below and like and subscribe. See you soon.